What the hexagon? Sun's out, guns out. Look at the arms on that woman. Hey, let me show you how I built these. Here we go. Okay, be really careful when you handle this. You should always wear gloves. I get the 12 footers, works out perfect. One 12-footer is enough for a raised bed. So I set it on my table like this. There's a million different ways to cut metal. I'll show you what I do. So inside the planter box, or right here, is one piece. You can see we have 23 3/4. Angle to angle, 23 3/4. If you come over to this finished bed, we connect our 30 degrees here. So you could go 23 3/4, but notice this gap. If you go too close, these ridges will touch. So I gave myself just a little bit of space. Treated lumber nowadays, I'm not worried at all about this leaching into my vegetables. There's only a little bit exposed. It's only going to come out a little bit if it does leach into the soil right here. There's nothing in this that's going to hurt us. I've done all the research. I've looked at a ton of videos. I feel really confident about it. If you don't, use cedar and pay 4 times more. Does that make sense, tribe? 23 3/4. Leave yourself a little bit of gap. I cut my sheet metal 23 inches. That gives me 3/8 on each side. I think that's perfect. If you can identify this sound, you must like and subscribe. So then, we need a 23-inch piece. This is my factory edge, nice and straight. So if you do it right, if you cut it nice and straight the first time, this factory edge can work as your template as you move down. So just mark your 23. And for your first cut, just take a straight edge to make your line. I've already done enough of these that I have a template. I just marked it with a little temp for template. Did arrows to mark the factory edge, and you could write factory. I do that because I cut so good that I can't tell which is the perfect side. Just kidding, I can totally tell, but that is a pretty nice cut right there. Not gonna lie. So just line that up, and then look, you got this nice straight edge to take your ink saw. Thank you, Milwaukee. And just trace your line. And I'm gonna use an angle grinder. Again, if there's a way you want to do it that you like better, like tin snips or put a blade on a circular saw. I just like the grinder. I like the control. I'm comfortable with it. So how I do it, and you'll see, I grind this side. I go halfway because I want a little bit of structure. I don't want it just to fall over. I go halfway up, and then I come and I cut this side, and I only have to support the piece when I'm cutting the last few inches. This stuff stacks together so tight, you just want to make sure you only got one sheet. Capiche? Here we go. Again, I'm just going to cut nice and straight this way. Safety goggles. I try to step sideways because I don't want to start my pants on fire. I got my spark guard on top just so the sparks kick down. They're actually going to kick out this way. I like to hold the battery to my side, and the handle gives me just a nice even chop. Here's how we do it. Just like when Jamie and I met, sparks are going to fly. So I go up half, come around this side. I just got to support it for this last little cut. Boom. So then I already have my template, but if you're just starting out, you have, gosh, I can't tell. Oh yeah, here's the factory edge. So you would just line up your perfect cut, golly, and then make your mark. Cool, cool. There's my pile of 2x4s. Again, I'm using treated, not worried about it. I'm sure I'll hear in the comments a few things, but you need 6 8-foot 2x4s per hexagon. So 25 bucks if you get the $3.88 ones. 6 2x4s. And each 2x4, I cut my 29s, 1, 2, and then my 18 3/4. Yeah. 18 3/4, 29. Such a nice height for a raised bed. We'll take a 2x4 over to the miter saw and I'll show you how I do it. Big sneezer coming. Woo! My sneeze, you can't even tell I'm sneezing usually. Oh, I don't want it to come right like mid chop. There, I think it went away. Cow's purple spots, cow's purple. Yep, it's gone. So I like to just square off the factory edge. I've already got my stop block set for 29, and this worked out great. I'll show you why and how. If you want to see how I do stop blocks, all my various methods, watch the video. So this one's set at 29. Here we go. I'm going to cut my 229s, and then I'll show you how I get my 18 3/4. On my new Bosch, I do miss Mr. DeWalt. He was a good miter saw. But on the new Bosch, I've got these adjustable arms. It's super fun. So see how these move in and out? It's like they just gave me a stop block. Super fun. I figured out flush with this edge is 18 3/4. All I do then, after I cut my 29, is just slide that flush. Works like a stop block. Anybody else have this switch where when you turn your miter saw on, the shop vac kicks on? There's this weird pressure. I've got 8 seconds from the time I cut to when that kicks off. So when I'm doing multiple, it's like this game in my head and it drives me nuts if I don't get it. But I like to keep the shop vac going. Does that make sense? I stack these over here. I'm going to Craig those. And once I get my 6 2x4s, we're going to go cut the angle. Let me tell you about that. On most table saws, you've got your angles right here. It's going to be usually set at 0, and you're going to test it to make sure it's right at 90. But we need a 30-degree cut, and they make it easy on my Laguna. There's the 30. Just put the needle there, and then this is how you adjust it back and forth, tighten it, rock solid. And the only other thing you want to make sure the blade is just going to clear the 2x4. Just come out the top. This is the angle piece that gets cut off. So I know with my 30 that this dimension right there is 2.5. So I set my fence at 2.5, 30 degrees going that way. Yep, that's what you're cutting off. Take 2. So I'll do the other one, and then I'll show you how we put it together. When I am cutting the 30s, I like to take a look at my 2x. It's a nice clean edge. Got this ugly knot right here. So I'm going to cut that right out. Going to angle it right off of there. And then my 18 3/4 pieces, just bring over to my outdated model of Craig. Need to get the new ones, pretty fancy. So I've got it set at 1.5 inches on the side. Craig makes it super easy. Thank you, Mr. Craig. I'm going to Craig 2 and 2. Got this set at 1.5 inches. And then I'm going to drill 1 and 2. And then just flip it over. Let me show you how I put the sides together. A little Type Bond 3. And just do a line of glue. I just like adding that little bit of extra. 2.5-inch pocket holes. Blue ones because we're going to be outside. Line of glue. It's nice to have a workbench you can walk around. Be nice if this was 3 foot wide instead of 2, but works great. So there is one of our panels. We just need to add the metal. Let me show you how I do that. Of the blue coated Craig screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times 6 is, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. 8 times 6, that's what you need. 36 per planter box. Are you questioning me?
6 times 6.
What did I say? 36. 48. So you've got 4 and 4, 8 per. 8 times 6 is 48. You need 48 Craig screws at 10 cents a piece. That's $4.80. Here's how I cheat a little bit. Figure out what's your bottom. Sorry. Figure out which part of the panel is your bottom. I cut a 1.5-inch strip. Let me show you how to find your bottom. Come on over. So if you've got some ugly on the wood, I don't know if you can see the bark showing there. If that was flipped on the other side, if there's any gnarly pieces, you can kind of see I put the bark of that one on the bottom just because you won't see it. So any ugly is what I make the bottom. I don't have an ugly bottom, been told. So this is how I cheat. So I take my 1.5 inches because we have 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches. It's just a fast way to do it. And I'm not measuring my sides. I'm just checking that, make sure there's about an equal gap there. Makes sense? And I'm going to take my number 10. This is number 10 sheet metal screw. You're going to need 6 of those per panel. Do the math. So how I do this, as you can see, I've got raised ridges. It would be hard to put this on ridge side down and I'd have these gaps. So I decided, and there's a couple things on this, just to be consistent. This is going to be my bottom. I changed my mind. Is on these ridges, there's no space here, but there's a nice flat channel on this one. So I always put flat channel on top. Doesn't matter. I just do it so it's consistent. That way these lines, those V channel, will line up all the way around the outside and just look good. You won't ever notice it. I would. Okay, so 1.5 inches from the bottom. Make sure you got equal space on the sides. I start in the middle. And I did that one below. I do this one on top. Don't know why. In my mind, it just gives me more. Yeah, I don't know why. Doesn't matter. Then I do one on the bottom in the channel. And this will bend out a little bit. Doesn't matter. And then I go up top and right in the middle of this flat channel. And I'm not stretching it or pulling it. I'm just pushing it flat and its screws are doing the work for me. There you go. So there is one panel of our Hexagon raised garden bed. I think you know I'm really stoked how these turned out. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 6 of these to make my box. So I'm going to go ahead and put the metal on 6. Then I'll show you how I put it all together. 2003, they stopped putting arsenic in treated lumber. Now it's, I'd have to look it up, like a copper something. Yeah, it looked like it's stuff that's naturally in soil or can be, you know. Anyway, it's funny, they said if you're worried about it at all, and they talked about how little it would leach in, like it wouldn't even reach where you're planting your plants. Not that it matters, because it's totally safe. I know people are going to argue with me on that one. But I'd love to make it out of cedar. I love cedar. But my $3.88 treated 2x4 in the cedar version is almost 20 bucks. So 6 times 20. So 120 bucks for 2x4s or 24. So I can make you a cedar raised garden bed. Just know it's going to cost you at least 100 bucks more. Oh, if you're worried about it, they said cover it with like a plastic. Like, I'd be more worried about the plastic leaching in than I would the treated lumber. Depending on what the plastic is, I guess. I think the organic community has, you know, if you're going to sell organic produce, it can't have contact with treated lumber. But again, some people are going to hate this, but I don't have a problem with it. And then 20 years from now, I'm sorry, I told you. Just kidding. One little tip I've learned from putting all these panels together is there's a nice sharp tip on these sheet metal screws, self-tapping. You can hold it and it'll spin forever. I've found that if I put it in place and then just hit the back of my drill, it seeds it perfect. So let me show you if I don't do that. If I don't hit the back of the drill, I got to hold the screw. And sometimes it'll spin forever. But if you give it a little tap, you're golden. Yeah, and sometimes it'll jam your hand. Take one panel, put the flat edge on top, like this. I'll put a line of glue down, and then I'll bring this one over, and I'll put 4 screws in, right? Again, this on top. Lining up the miter. So much easier once you get the first screw in. I do 1, 2, 3, 4. When you put your screws in, just match this angle. So see how this is nice and straight? Just visualize that. And you're going into the 2x4 that way. Let's get it started and get your angle. See how this is nice and straight like that. So you want to match this. If you look on top, it makes more sense. See how that's the angle you want to go straight in. I've got a little bit of bark here, so it's kind of messed up, but still see it. Beautiful. And then I'll just pivot, tight bond 3. Flat channel. Match the angle. See how this is down a little bit? I'll show you what's happening here. There, see that? Always easier when you get the first one in. Could use 3 screws. I don't know. I like a little over-engineered, I think. I want this to last until I die. So another at least 5 years. No, you want it to last as long as, I mean, I think with this ground contact treated and the metal, it's not going to go anywhere. These are going to feed our family for years and years. I wonder if it'll feed our grandkids. I said, wonder if it'll feed the grandkids. Oh, I hope I don't talk like that. That hurts my throat. Sorry, old people. You wonder other people how much stuff gets edited out. Oh, buddy. Put that right there. Takes me about an hour, start to finish. I'm guessing your first go, depending on where you're at. You know, once you get past the fear of putting the first screw in, probably take you an hour and a half, 2 hours. But you can get really proficient, so give yourself grace on the first one, and then you'll be able to pound them out. Coming together. Really hoping the glue helps keep it together, but time will tell. Man, I love it when it comes together. All your angles right and your cuts right, assembly should be easy peasy. If you're going to be doing, you know, a bunch of these, get through one. Make sure you put one from start to finish, just so you could see, like, let's say this angle was a couple degrees off. You're not going to know that until you put it all together, and you'll see, oh, there's a gap here. That means my angle's off, and then you can adjust it. That way you haven't messed the angle up on all 10 boxes, if that makes sense. So do one start to finish, work out all the kinks if there are any. And the last one, you're going to have to pull it apart, manipulate it a little bit. I'll show you. What I do for the last one is tight bond both sides. I'm going to get this side in, and then we'll push that side together. Wonder who my first follower is going to be that makes one of these. Actually lined up pretty darn good. We're going to have to push out the bottom a little bit. Yeah, that worked out well. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 24 screws. There it is. Love it. I'm going to have my wife help me set this on top of the other one. Girls are going to want to play in there. And that's a wrap. And cut. Oh, and cut.